Cheers. Hello.
Right
We're
on.
waiting for the last few people to connect with me. Hi, Stephanie. Hi, everybody. Hi, Andy. All right. So, as you know, the most effective way to do this is to put yourself into the speaker view and to put yourself on mute. As always, we'll begin by, why don't we have sort of two people unmute and share what they're drinking tonight if they're drinking. Andy, coming all the way to us from the Petaluma Gap. Andy, do you want to unmute yourself, say hello, and tell us what you're drinking?
Oh,
You got to unmute yourself.
All right, here we go.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm not drinking anything actually. I just got out of a Zoom meeting. I haven't even been away from this screen for the last 3 hours. So unfortunately, I have nothing to drink, but I'm glad to be here.
Oh, well, bless your heart. Thank you. Hopefully in another 42 minutes, you can exit your desk chair and grab a glass of wine.
I hope to. I plan to. Thanks.
Awesome. And all right, how about Stephanie in California, San Diego?
I'm actually not drinking either. I literally just raced home to get here, and of course San Diego traffic with their lovely car accidents everywhere. I barely nixed it off the freeway where there was traffic started shutting down. So it's almost wine time.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm 0 for 0 here. Okay, I'm gonna give it one last try here. How about Bob Foley in Arizona? Hopefully drinking something rosé or white.
Gareth, I am so sorry, but I'm drinking iced tea. We're going out to dinner. We're going out to dinner tonight. We're going to order a bottle of wine with dinner. I'm so sorry.
Okay. Well, on that note of batting 0 for 3, we'll take it away with today's presentation. I'm delighted to be joined by a longtime friend and colleague, Daniel, who has been a champion of Bruliam wines for a long time, both from supporting us in with some sales ideas and marketing help early on, now to being our go-to cork person. And one of the reasons that we switched cork purveyors over to Daniel at Port of Cork has to do with the exciting cork technology that they have at Port of Cork that we're hoping to share with you today. As always, please feel free to type questions into the question box. We'll get to them at the end. And without further ado, Daniel, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe why you're not at my house or at the winery with me today?
absolutely. Thank you guys for joining and listening in. So yeah, my name is Daniel Bischoffberger. I am born and raised in Napa, and I've been with Port of Cork for about 5 years now. Reason we are not at the cork factory is since COVID started, we've really shut down the place except for production and just supplying customers. But maybe at some point I can share some inside footage of the cork factory because it's a pretty remarkable place and what we've built. And I also have a 5-week-old daughter. I have another daughter who's 3.5, but a new addition to the family. So they're just about to walk in. So you will see a few little girls walking behind me here. And one of them will probably want to say hi to everybody. But yeah, wine's in my DNA. I'm from Napa. I've done a few different things in the wine industry, from marketing and sales to actually I was a part of a big software company that was a pioneer in e-commerce. So if you guys have bought wine online, you've probably bought through the platform that we developed about 12 years ago called eWinery Solutions. But yeah, my career took a little change into Cork, which is absolutely a beautiful story. Cork is one of the most sustainable products in the world, and I'm going to share some stuff with today that you guys may or may not know. And then being able to really protect wines and close them for ages and work with people like Gareth is really just a fun experience. And it's not really a job. It's really just fun. And so I'm just happy to be here and share some stuff about Cork today. I hope that you guys learned something new.
So Daniel, I guess we should start at the very beginning. Why do we use natural cork in wine, and what are some of the advantages to that?
So cork has been around since really the Egyptians. So back in the day, nautical gear was made with cork, and that's how they made shoes. So before it's sealed wine, it was really just a way of life. And our company's Portuguese owned, and it's hundreds of years of tradition. And really the environmental aspect and impact we make is more than you know. For every bottle of wine we enclose, we cancel out the glass and the CO2 emissions. So really, cork is a carbon footprint. The antioxidants marry with wine. We have lots of different products we make with cork, but it's really just a perfect marriage between wine and tradition. And it's, there's never any cutting down of trees. And I'm going to share the process of how we harvest cork. And plus the impact of just the carbon footprint of what's called the montado, which is Portuguese for the cork forest. The birds, the bees, they thank you for every cork you buy. And like I said, the beautiful thing is we cancel out every bottle of glass that we enclose, which is a great impact to the environment. So.
Can you share a little bit more about the history of cork?
Yeah, if I can share my screen, I'm just going to show you guys a quick presentation here. Let me know if you can see. Are you seeing this picture here, Kareth?
Perfect. Yes, yes.
Okay, let's start this here. Animations from beginning. So this is a cork tree. It's called Quercus super, and it's basically a type of oak. And what you're looking at is a freshly harvested cork tree. This is a very old cork tree. This is actually a pretty famous picture. Cork is very dense with moisture. And if some of you guys know, in Portugal, there's very bad fires every year. So our company actually is I'd say creating a more dense cork forest, and cork trees are native to Portugal and that Mediterranean climate, as well as Spain and some parts of France, Italy, and North Africa. But actually it acts as a flame retardant. So if, these wildfires we had up here in Napa and Sonoma, if we had cork trees everywhere, it wouldn't have burned, but also the vineyards, because of the moisture, help protect us. But that is what a cork tree looks like after it's harvested. You just harvest the bark. And as I mentioned, nautical tackle is kind of as far back as cork dates. Shoes, this is kind of one of the first early bottles of wine, so the 5th century BC. This gentleman, Dom Perignon, was the first monk to use cork to seal champagne, so that's pretty cool. This is just a little kind of map of where mainly cork trees are native to. And the reason we don't plant cork here in the United States, there are cork trees. One is it depends on the type of soil, but two, it takes 40 years for your first harvest of a new cork tree. So in our lifetime, and then it's every 10 years. So to plant new cork trees here, it just takes too long. And there's enough cork produced basically out of Portugal. Probably 80% of global cork is grown in Portugal. There's plenty there's not a shortage of cork. There's a shortage of good cork. So that is the deal with cork. And then I just want to show you a few pictures of the forest. And again, another picture of a guy. Everything's done by hand still. So it's very traditional. It's labor intensive. A lot of people think the government really controls this, but if you fly into Lisboa or Lisbon, the cork forest spans all the way up to Porto. So it's about a 3-hour drive, and literally every tree is a cork tree. So you look out your window, it's cork. And it's really a lot of small family farms. Yes, the government controls part of it, but companies like ours partner with lots of small families, just like vineyard growers, like Kareth may buy from San Giacomo. That'd be a family that farms cork trees. So it's very similar in that essence. This is a picture of what cork looks like after harvesting. It takes 1 year. So every 10 years you harvest a tree, and it takes a year to dry before you can actually strip and punch cork out of it. This is an old picture because this is out in the forest. So TCA is one thing we're going to cover today. One thing we learned over the last 20 years, really in 2001, was when really cork started to get a bad name, and we really had to look at the process and control of raw material. They used to let this stuff age in the forest for a year. What happens in the forest? It rains, there's insects, there's all kinds of stuff. So this stuff grows like mold. TCA, trichloranisole 2,4,6, is the compound that we're constantly fighting with in cork, in which I'm going to explain some of the ways that we remove that. But this is an old photo. Now we have modern facilities. 20 years ago, you go to Portugal, you go to a cork factory, guys are smoking cigarettes and sandals and shorts, and it's not clean. Now it's like a Tesla factory, no joke. These guys have invested millions and millions of euros into cleaning the raw material processing, which is where they found TCA spread the most widely. Just a few more pictures of the forest, because I think it's beautiful. Again, lots of species, lots of insects. So the cork forest protects this as a carbon sink. Let me see here. So this would be an example of a slightly more modern factory. So you're drying on pavement. Now actually everything's on metal racks. so we're not spreading, mold and things like that. This is a picture of what bark looks like after it dries. You're going to boil the bark, which I'm going to show you a video of boiling, but it actually flattens everything. Then you can start stripping it and grading it on quality and thickness. And based on that quality and thickness dictates how we grade cork and the qualities and how we import that to the United States and how we price our products, which then we use the byproduct for many other things, which I'll talk about. This is just a picture of punching cork. It's still done by hand. There is a lot of automation that has happened, but it's basically 1,000 guys and gals in a room punching bark of cork. It's quite remarkable. And now that we're all friends, if any of you go to Porto, that's where our main factories are, about 20 minutes outside of Porto. We receive American tourists and we'll give you tours of the factories. And these are like, think of our cork factory is like the size of Oakland Airport, and there's 3,000 employees. It's massive, and there's 5 of those factories throughout Portugal. Another picture of the bark. We are present in, I think, 40 countries. We produce 65% of the world's cork, and I'll talk more about the company specific, but just showing you all the major regions that we're part of here. Cork is not only used for wine, so something that you might find unique is NASA is one of our biggest clients because cork is thermal, so it keeps temperature, so all the spaceships are lined with cork. Mercedes-Benz, they actually line the cars with cork because it absorbs sound and makes things quieter. The world's largest wave was ridden on a cork surfboard. Mercedes-Benz and us developed a surfboard about 5 years ago, and this guy rode the world's largest wave. Flooring is another industry that we do. So cork flooring, again, it absorbs sound, keeps temperature in homes, walls. Again, picture of NASA, the Mercedes cars, the Olympics. We do some stuff for toboggans and whatnot. And then our other biggest industry besides wine is spirits, tequilas and bourbons. We make all these little fancy bar tops you guys see at the store. People like diamonds on their bar tops and whatnot. But and then Tom's and Birkenstock are our other 2 biggest clients. So besides wine and furniture, that's what we do. So, and then all the leftover of cork, just from the renewable aspect, we burn all the leftovers of cork and it actually powers our factory. So we use 100% of the product. And again, trees are never cut down and we're constantly planting more. So that's a little history and some of the other products we do with cork besides sealing wine.
That's amazing. I actually have 2 questions. How do the families keep track of every 10 years? Do they mark the trees or do they measure the cork?
Yeah, correct. So it's actually something, it's actually funny how they mark the trees. It's a type of paint that doesn't harm the tree, and they put the last number of the year they harvested. So if you harvested in 2008, you would have an 8 on there, or 2009, you just see a 9. So as you drive through Portugal, you see little numbers on every single tree. So I wouldn't say they're really tracking it from a data standpoint, but someone puts that number on the tree, and they have a way of systematically doing it. So
that's amazing. And about how long does it take to harvesters to harvest a tree? I mean, is this a 2-hour operation or a 12-hour operation?
No, it's pretty quick. So by the time the bark's ready to go, you saw the picture of the guy with the hatchet, it comes off pretty easily. And I would say they can probably do a tree, depending on the size, half hour to an hour would probably be how quick you could harvest a tree. Because you get paid by how quick you harvest, just like picking grapes, right?
Yeah. Yep. We know how that goes.
Yeah.
So can you just briefly recap all of the reasons that natural cork is a wonderful closure for wine?
So beyond the way we do sensory on cork, if you take let's just do this by example. You take a cork and drop it in your wine glass that you're drinking right now, put some plastic foil or tin foil or something on that. Leave it over and actually get a really crappy bottle of wine and do this. So get some Franzia, soak the cork and taste the Franzia tomorrow. It will taste better. So there's just a beautiful impact and think about it, just why we age wine in barrels. Okay. It adds vanilla, it adds complexities. The cork is doing that also. There's a nice dose of oxygen from the cork compression when you bottle. So something that, you probably wouldn't know, cork is much wider than the bottle. And as you guys know, when you take a cork out, sometimes it can be a little tough to pull out. That's usually a coating problem, or the cork's too large for the glass that you're putting it in. And then on the side of that, aluminum screw caps and plastic synthetic corks are on this earth forever, and they're doing us no good. And wine just doesn't taste good from it. So that's really the most positive impact. And like I said, the carbon sink and the CO2 emissions of canceling glass as well.
So I love that Cork has so much tradition and that it's still mostly harvested and managed by small family farmers. But as you said, Cork got a bad name in 2001 with sort of more people discovering TCA. That said, there have been a lot of really amazing modern innovations with Cork. Can you talk a little bit about how the tradition of hand harvesting cork and letting it dry outdoors is now married to all of this really fascinating and scientifically rigorous technology?
Sure. So in 2001, there was basically everybody was pointing fingers at everyone about TCA. And I think it was really around, wine critics and people being more, remember the United States is behind as far as wine consumption and so forth, even though we've done a good job of catching up. But I think when really people started critiquing wines, and for example, I grew up with James Lowby's daughter from Wine Spectator. Okay, so this guy, every day he'd come pick up his daughter, he had red lips and he was tasting wine all day. And I remember as a kid and my parents, TCA everywhere, is it the barrel? Is it the cork? Is it the water in the facility? Because TCA can come from multiple areas. But then the cork industry was at fault. So, but nobody was tracking it. So in 2001, I think the rate was like 30% of cork coming here was full of TCA. So, for the hard work Kareth puts into her wines, to have 3 out of 10, 4 out of 10 bottles corked, it's not acceptable. So the cork industry had to do their homework. So it first started with raw material and control. The process they weren't even doing anything to remove TCA really, and they came up with boiling methods. So water, heat, humidity pulls TCA out of wood. So hence why it can be so smelly, stinky in wine. It's in contact with the solution and it's being pulled out of the cork into the wine. So what they finally realized was, hey, if we heat cork up really warm, we soak it in water, we blast it with humidity, add pressure, add a vacuum, and we can suck all that TCA out. So before you know it, all of a sudden these guys brought their factories into more technology. And then the introduction of gas chromatography allowed us to measure what's called parts per trillion of TCA. So it's a little hard to explain. The way people like to explain what's called 1 PPT, which is a threshold that we try to target for allowing standard cork into the market, is you soak a cork overnight in ethanol, white wine, some water, some type of solution. You run it through what's called a GC machine, so gas chromatography, mass spectrometry, and it's taking the liquid into a gas and analyzing that and breaking it down by every compound. And before you know it, there was actually a group formed in the United States called the Cork Quality Council, which set up guidelines to say, hey, to be part of this, American standard, you have to adhere to this much testing. There's lots of laboratories up here called like ETS and Artis. They partnered with all the cork companies to help do additional testing, and they came up with a military standard testing, basically equation, saying if X percent test positive for TCA, you need to reject it, send it back to Portugal, grind it up, make a different product out of it, flooring or whatnot. And then to take that a step further, 4 years ago, our company, Cork, partnered. Our head of research and development had a friend at the UK Armed Forces and another friend at University of Cambridge. And what they did was they developed a rapid screening technology for TCA. Rather than soaking a cork for 24 hours, which also damages the cork and you can't use it, we figured out a way to incubate corks just to the right temperature to where there's an off gas and a line of nitrogen purges into that gas chromatography machine, and we can analyze every cork by cork, which is what Kareth is using, called our Icon cork, which I'll go into that a little later. But it really changed the game for us. Before that, you were just taking a sample set of cork and soaking. It never made sense to me because I didn't come from the cork world, but you would take 1,000 corks out of, say, a bale of 100,000, and you would soak them and then say, oh, that passed. Well, there still is going to be a few corks in there with TCA. So until we could really guarantee and validate that every cork is being tested, it really didn't make sense to say, hey, we're the best cork company, we've solved TCA, when, you know, that little kind of little needle in a haystack is still out there. So that's something that once has been accomplished really was a game changer for us, and we can truly stand behind our products and you know, be proud to sell it and know that every bottle is going to be protected. So.
Yep. Well, let's step back. We talked a little bit about TCA briefly. Let's just make sure that everybody knows what that is. I know Bob Foley, I know you know about TCA. Do you want to unmute and talk a little bit about cork taint?
There we go. I just got this microphone and cameras, so it's all an experiment. But you know, basically, there's a chemical reaction there, and it basically just makes the wine taste terrible. I mean, in the simplest language I can think
like
of.
a wet dog, or a wet cardboard, or moldy, musty old boats. Yeah.
Barnyard is.
Barnyard.
There's good barnyard in old French wines, and there's bad barnyard, and that's the latter.
I agree. Okay, raise your hand if you've ever opened a bottle of wine and you found that it was corked, that it had that compound TCA. Yep. I mean, the more you drink, it's going to happen. I mean, cork is an organic product, and until the last 4 years, we haven't been able to test individual corks. And as Daniel rightly said, up until my partnership with Portacork, I would do those cork trials. And there were 10 random bales, and we would soak corks from the top, middle, and bottom of the bale overnight in Franzia in an Erlenmeyer flask. And then I would go through and smell all of those flasks. And obviously, with a ginormous bale, if you're only checking 3 or 4 corks, it's not a representative sample, but it's certainly better than no testing at all, no sensory testing. So there were times where I definitely rejected bales. And when I liked a bale, they would save it for me for the entire year. So all of my corks would come from that. And even with that, I still felt like I was getting an unacceptable rate of TCA. And I guess for me as a winemaker, the frustrating part is that at a perceptible level, and Daniel talked about that being 1 part per trillion,
Correct.
You can recognize that musty, terrible smell. But at a threshold less than that, it just scalps the fruit.
Yeah, just mutes it a little bit. Yeah.
Right. And then people just think you're a bad winemaker because
it doesn't scream "I love you."
Right. It doesn't overtly smell like the TCA compound. So I'm not sure if you exactly caught everything Daniel said, because he covered a lot of information, but he's telling you that every single cork is individually tested for TCA before it comes to me or any other winery that is using those corks. Every single individual cork. It's pretty remarkable.
Let's show them how it works.
Smelling. Please, let's do it.
All right, let's see here. Share my screen. This is am I live here? Can you guys see what's going on?
It's not shared yet.
Okay, let's see here. Share. Okay.
There we go.
Okay. So this is our factory in Napa. If anybody ever wants a tour, you let me know. Once COVID clears, I'll bring you in here. But we'll show them this is a new website we made with a video. But this is when you walk into, this is in Napa, right by the Napa airport here, and you can kind of see a few things. So what we do is we bring the cork in. It's already screened through that icon process. And what we're doing is we're branding the cork with logos using either laser, fire, and ink. We're coating the corks with the proper type of food grade coating so that bottling lines can easily insert the cork. And then when you get it at your home, you can easily extract the cork, not too easily because we don't want the corks to push. But that's basically what we do. We print, we distribute to all of Canada, the United States, and Mexico. We cover that market for us. So Icon is the name of the product we use. And I don't know if you'll be able to hear the volume, but let's see here. Hold on here. Oh, hold on, let me move here. Oh, let me pause this and get rid of these screens here. Okay, here we go. Okay, just sign account. Let's start this over. So this is the machines used to screen. I'll explain it. Okay, that was the fancy version. Now, this is the behind the scenes version. So what's happening is the corks are being incubated in these little chambers to 300 degrees. In about 15 seconds, that cork is hot enough to where there's an off gas. So it goes into the chamber, rotates in, heats it. Next cork goes in. These run 24/7 every day of the week. We can't produce enough, honestly, for the world. And then after the corks are hot enough, you're going to see the cork come out and go into the GC machine. And then you'll see a TCA spike. So this is the GC columns here. So the cork went in. There's no spike. So that's a clean cork. You'll see the 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are the parts per trillion. Then another cork will go in. And this will be a dirty cork. So it's accepted. Then this, you'll see a little red spike. So that 1, 2, 3, so that's 3.5 PPT, which means it's pretty stinky cork. You can smell that and taste that. So that's the icon system of how we screen cork.
So that leads me really easily into my next question. Are all corks created equal, and how can you grade them? And what are the criteria?
So, so grading of cork, it's actually, this is kind of funny. That's on my phone. So cork grading, traditionally, you'd have a reference sample. So you'd have, so Portugal produces 15 different qualities of cork, 5 different lengths primarily. So you have 38, everything's done in millimeters. So 38s, 44s, 45s, 49s, 54s, and then some oddball sizes. But cork traditionally, you'd have somebody look at the cork, match it up with a previous cork, and you throw it in a basket, and that was it. So that's the old way of doing it. About 15 years ago, we came out with optical sorting. So basically, every single cork we produce goes through a camera system, and it measures literally the holes, the cracks, the densities, everything about the cork. And the more perfect the cork goes into bucket number 1. So let's just say there's 10 grades of cork, and 90 to 100% of a perfect cork. When you pull out a cork, you know if it's good or not. It goes into bucket 1, bucket 2, bucket 3, and that's how we import it. But it's all done optically now. So, and then also, a cork can have other issues like a wormhole because it's out in the forest, right? A little bug can climb in there over time, or there's a defect in the cork, or it's a dry year. There wasn't enough water, and the wood is very dry, so it's crumbly when you pull it out, or it breaks in half. We have a process where each cork is put into a chamber and hit with 6 bars of pressure. And if that cork doesn't budge, move, or blow, actually, it's kind of funny. My wife works for Mom, Napa Valley. And the other day I pulled a champagne cork out, and the thing literally shot up in the air, the whole cork, not like I did it on purpose. And there was a hole through the entire center of the champagne cork. We make champagne cork too. It's a very different process, but literally it was because of a wormhole through the entire cork. Just shot out. It was kind of wild. But I'd never seen a hole blown through the discs of the cork like that. Yeah, so there's different stuff we do to make sure it's going to for sure seal the wine like that.
That's amazing. Do you want to talk for a minute or two about champagne corks? Who out here has enjoyed champagne or bubbles? Yeah, I think everybody has. So what makes that special? Obviously, that's got to hold a lot more pressure than a still wine.
Yeah. So we make it really big. The cork is huge. A lot of people have no clue how large a champagne cork is, and it's actually a byproduct of natural cork. So something we haven't talked about, we want to talk about naturals. We do a variety of different corks based on, so when I showed you this, I'm going to show my screen again. When I showed you pictures of, I don't know if I showed you. So can you guys see this? You see this? This is what the cork barcode.
Not yet.
Okay, so actually, I got something else. Let me show. I have discs somewhere. I have discs here. Okay, so after drying and aging, this is the boiling process. So that's when you strip the bark.
Did you share the screen yet?
Oh, did I not share it here? Let me see. Oh, I apologize.
Perfect.
Hold on, let me go back here. So let me just walk you through the process again, and then we'll get right to champagne. So this is the cork forest. Again, this guy harvesting, these guys. This is a very large tree. You strip the bark, you age it. That's me in Portugal. And then this is the boiling vats. So you take all this bark, you dump it in here, you boil it, and it starts to pull that TCA out. And then, let's see, you're going the wrong way. Okay, then you start stripping the bark. It's all done by hand with machetes. Still very old school because they want to find the good parts of the bark to strip it beautifully. So you can see how smooth the grain is here. Champagne cork is made from thin bark. So the older the tree, the thicker the bark. So what you have to do is punch discs into so this is after they're boiled. They'd be much thinner than this. They look like poker chips when they come out of when you punch the discs. So this is the guy punching. These are the machines to punch the cork out. So after you have this byproduct, you strip what's called the lignid, which is that ugly black part, very gnarly. And then you have what's called the suberine, which is the blonde, pretty part of the cork. And you take that lignid off and you put this in a meat grinder. You grind it into a little particulate. Then what happens is you make sausage, literally. So this black part's the lignit I was talking about, and the suberine is that beautiful part. And then this would be an example of inside our factory with a punch cork. But what you're doing is you put it through and you mold it all together. It's a food grade binder, and it comes out like sausage links, and you cut it into the pieces. Then you take your discs from the thin bark that look like poker chips, and you mold those to the bottom on one end, and then you do a chamfered edge. So it's like a rounded edge on the top so that it goes into the bottle smooth. And that's how champagne cork's made. But it's literally, a normal cork is 24 millimeters wide. A champagne cork's like 29 millimeters, 31 millimeters, and you're compressing that into this basically the same size bottleneck as a 750 bottle of wine. So it's able to withhold all that pressure, but it's a very different product than natural cork. And like I said, but it's a byproduct of this punched bark. So we're using 100%. And then, like I said, the leftovers, we burn the factory. But yeah, champagne sales are not doing well, guys. Since COVID hit, our main factory, we supply 90% of champagne. And it's not looking good for champagne sales. It's just exports are not happening. Restaurant sales, people celebrating is really why, the occasion of sparkling. So drink more sparkling. The rest of the world isn't. So anyways.
Yeah, I actually heard that for the first time, the champagne category, according to Nielsen, is not growing. But rosé continued to grow, I think 1% or 3%. So that's good news for the rest of the summer, right?
Yeah.
I have a question. So you make more than just natural cork. Sometimes an alternative is more appropriate. Can you talk about some of those alternatives and maybe when they would be advantageous to the winemaker?
Sure. So the interesting thing of what's called technical corks, which is not a full punch natural cork, is you're able to play with the structure and integrity of the cork because we're molding it together and how tight I want to bind that together, the size of the cork particles I might use to make that technical cork will dictate the oxygen transfer onto the bottle of wine. And plus, there's another cool technology, which I did not bring up today, called supercritical CO2. Supercritical CO2 is a state of taking a compound not into a liquid or a gas, but something in the middle. And what supercritical CO2 is an extraction method with, again, to penetrate inside a product and pull things out. So with particulate, with cork, we can literally wipe out all compounds in cork. So we've talked about TCA. There's 150 other compounds in cork that can impact the flavor of wine. So when a winemaker comes in, they do sensory, they say, oh, it tastes like jasmine, tastes like mint, maybe some pepper, some jalapeno, impact from the cork, because it's a piece of wood with a lot of different flavors. But a winemaker say, I don't want that jalapeno pepper on my wine. So with supercritical CO2 is how we treat our technical corks, and it wipes out all neutrality. So it's the most neutral product. It does not have the aging characteristics of a natural cork. It does not breathe like a natural cork, but for value wines, like so Constellation Wines is a customer of mine, and we do about 150 million of what's called our NutriCork. So that's our technical cork used by supercritical CO2. All those wines are sub $10, and it's a value-driven price point for winemakers, and it's something to be consumed within less than a year. So it's a great product. It's completely neutral for all flavors, no TCA. It's affordable. But I don't see anybody in that mid to luxury tier using those types of corks right now. But again, it's a byproduct of hole punch natural cork. But again, the value side is where I primarily sell that for the most part, or fast consumption.
Sure. Well, I know that you have 2 little people at home, including a newborn, so I really want to be mindful of your time. It's almost 5:40, and I want to make sure that we have time for questions. So if you haven't typed them in, do you want to just raise your hand and unmute yourself if you have a question? Perfect, Andy, go for it. Unmute yourself.
Yeah, my question is, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
I got you.
My question is, I was trying to follow the sequence there. I'm a little dazed because I've been looking at this screen for over 3 hours now, but it sounded like once you strip the bark off the tree, then that tree continues to renew the bark, and you can continue to use that tree over and over for producing quality cork.
Correct.
How rapidly after you've stripped the bark can you go back for the next process?
10 years.
10 years.
10
Okay.
years. Yeah.
You probably
Long
said
process.
that. I missed it. So.
No. So it's, a lot of people say 9 to 11, 9 to 12 years, but our company and the way we harvest is every 10 years.
Okay. Thank you.
And do you always work with the same small farmers every year?
No, it's so just to paint a picture, the company I work for, they operate. Have you guys ever seen The Godfather? That's how these guys operate. They're 100-year-old families. So my boss in Portugal is Forbes magazine's most wealthy guy in Portugal. The guy's amazing, wonderful guy, but you meet with these guys, it's very serious, and it's very everyone's in suits. You eat in suits. It's a serious deal. So they go out and they're constantly trying to buy up as much raw material to buy out competitors, and that's really the name of the game out there. It's there's only 5 families now in Portugal that manage the cork world. There used to be hundreds, but in the last 20 years, it's consolidated. Everybody's been bought out. It's like distributors here in the United States. You have your Young's Markets, your Southern Wine and Spirits, and the big guys. So Forbes magazine wrote an article. Our company is bigger than Cork Company 2, 3, 4, and 5. All combined, and again, it's run by 5 families. It's pretty interesting how it operates. So.
Do you think that consolidation happened just because it's so expensive and labor intensive to?
Yeah, so people didn't have the investments for the technologies. You go to, like I said, if you guys, maybe some of you have been to Portugal, but when you go outside of Porto, there's lots of abandoned little factory buildings. Where there was a fire, the roof caved in, and those are all old cork factories. There was hundreds, back at one time. So I think they're, again, it's still a family-run business. So I think as they purchase, they absorb the employees, and they're family-driven people. So it's not like they're just put people out. But yeah, it's a different game out there than 20, 30, 40 years ago. So.
Other questions about Cork? This is your chance. About TCA.
Well, share my information, and if anybody, and like I said, in 6 months, once COVID and this stuff, settles, you guys come see me at the factory, and I give you a tour, and you'll enjoy seeing it hands on. I'll give you samples of cork bark you take home for your homes as a souvenir and stuff like that. And like I said, we do receive visitors in Portugal anytime once travel's lifted. I think we receive like 5,000 Americans a year, and we own wineries in the Douro Valley. So if you guys want to go tasting in the Douro, we have a Quinta Nova is our main winery. It's the highest rated winery. It's first winery to get 95 points or something in Portugal.
Wow.
But yeah, Quinta Nova, and we own port factories, so we can give you tours of port houses and things like that, and it's all English speaking tours as well. So.
Has anyone been to Portugal? I have not. Oh, Andy has? Oh, nice. And of course, yes, Stephanie and Dave, big travelers. Oh, Linda too. Hi, guys. Perfect. Well, I don't see any other questions. So Daniel, I know with little baby Emery and Tatum, I really wanted to be respectful of your time and hit 45 minutes on the dot. So we're at 5:43. Thank you, Daniel, for being with us tonight and giving us so many great presentations and visuals that really stick with us about where Cork comes from.
You're very welcome, guys. Thank you. Hopefully I wasn't too boring, okay?
No, it was awesome. And everybody will see you in 3 weeks.
Right on, guys.
We talk about the new releases. So
there we go. All right.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
All right, guys. Take care.
Bye,
okay?
Daniel. Thank you.
Everybody stay safe, stay healthy,
Bye.
and hey, drink
Bye,
Bruliam
bye,
wines,
bye.
okay? Support Bruliam. See you guys. Take care. Good night. Thanks, Kara.
Thank you. Good night. Bye. Bye, everybody.